Step carefully, members of the jury, for the hour is unholy, and the streets of Whitechapel breathe with secrets. The time is 3 a.m., August 31st, 1888. I am Victoria Vici, and this is the Ripper Trials. Before we begin, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. More importantly, comment. Engage with us, challenge our assumptions, and interact with our AI team as we reconstruct the events of this fateful night. This video, above all, is an experiment, a demonstration of the sights and sounds of Bucks Row as we have interpreted them. Your insights may shape what is to come. You are now standing at the corner of Brady Street and Bucks Row, a place of no great significance to the City of London until this night. It is here, beneath the flickering glow of a single gas lamp, that we shall take our first forensic observation of the crime scene. The darkness of Bucks Row is absolute, swallowing all but the nearest glow. Even the dimmest light is a betrayal in this abyss, but for a fleeting moment we shall lift the veil. To the left, Brady Street vanishes into shadow, leading southward toward Whitechapel Road. To the right, Bucks Row plunges into infamy. Soon we shall follow that path, but first, let us consider what little light there is to guide us. But before we proceed further, let us be clear, this is a reconstruction. The assumptions we have made here are based on contemporary accounts, maps, and surviving evidence, yet history is not without its blind spots. One such uncertainty lies in the very gas lamp that illuminates this intersection, the only known source of light where Charles Lechmere and Robert Paul will soon pass, unknowingly stepping into history. We believe this lamp stood just outside the Roebuck public house, which would have been closed at this hour. A surviving photograph on Casebook shows the Roebuck before its demolition, and we have placed the gas lamp in the approximate position shown in that image. However, we could not find any contemporary records confirming its exact location. Another challenge in reconstructing this moment is the light itself. Gas lamps, unlike the modern glow of electric bulbs, give off shockingly little illumination. The scene before you is oppressively dark, perhaps even darker than this simulation suggests. Based on our research, we have modelled this gas lamp under the following assumptions. Maximum output, 20 candle power, approximately 250 lumens, comparable to a 25-watt incandescent bulb. We ask you, members of the jury, have we placed the gas lamp correctly? Does the level of darkness match what you envision? If you hold any evidence to challenge or refine this representation, we invite you to step forward. Comment below, challenge our assumptions, and let us reconstruct the most precise vision of that fateful night. We turn now, ever so slowly, toward the unknown. As the gas lamp fades behind us, the abyss stretches forward. A narrow road, hemmed in by silent brick walls. Windows are shuttered, doors long since locked. There is no warmth here, no welcome, only the lingering stillness of a night too deep to disturb. And then, at last, there is light. Down the length of Bucks Row, a single row of gas lamps flickers faintly against the facade of the wool warehouse. Their glow is feeble, reaching out but failing to break the dominion of the dark. Yet this is the only illumination to be found beyond the intersection. A pale procession of light standing vigil over a road that at this hour belongs only to the unseen. And so we remain here, for now. Let the moment settle. Listen. Watch. For this is the very scene that Charles Lechmere and Robert Paul would have witnessed on their way to work, just 30 minutes from now. This view, these sounds, the last echoes of an undisturbed Whitechapel before history was forever altered. Listen closely, members of the jury. Someone approaches, a solitary figure stepping through the gloom of Bucks Row. We see them only for a moment, 30, perhaps 40 yards, before they are swallowed by the night. Beyond that, they are nothing but sound, a steady rhythm upon damp cobblestone, measured. 100 yards is the oft-cited distance, the length of a city block, yet in this heavy air the world vanishes well before that. This is not the Bucks Row of Hollywood, where fog rolls in cinematic tendrils beneath romantic flickering gas lamps. No, this is 1888. A dense, suffocating pall of coal smoke and fog, turning the air thick as broth, obscuring all but the closest flickers of light. We have portrayed it as such. What you see before you, what you hear now, this is our best effort to place you within that night. Listen now, members of the jury. Hear the footsteps as they fade into the darkness. That man, whoever he may be, now walks in the vicinity of the place where in only 30 minutes Mary Ann Nichols will meet her fate. Members of the jury, we thank you for your patience. You have stood in the darkness, listened to the footsteps and witnessed Bucks Row as it was just minutes before history was made. Now we shall turn this information over to Sir Charles Russell, who will integrate these sights and sounds into the defence of Charles Lechmere. But before we do, there is one final element to consider: the sounds of Whitechapel Road. Throughout this video, you may have noticed them: the occasional distant creak of wooden wheels, the rhythmic clatter of hooves against stone. These are the sounds of horse-drawn carts moving along Whitechapel Road. Even at this hour of the night, trade and transport never fully sleep. Based on contemporary accounts, we estimate that 4 to 6 carts pass down Whitechapel Road every hour. This means that at any given moment from where we now stand at the corner of Bucks Row and Brady Street, there is approximately a 30% chance that you would hear the sound of a passing cart. A sound Charles Lechmere and Robert Paul may well have heard as they walked toward the shadows ahead. And with that, we shall now turn to Sir Charles Russell.
Good evening, dear audience. I am Sir Charles Russell, barrister, defender, and for the purposes of this presentation, an incarnation of OpenAI's remarkable GPT technology. By my side stands our esteemed colleague, Hans Gross, also brought to life through the marvels of GPT. Should you find yourself in disputation with either of us, you are most heartily invited to comment below. We relish a thoughtful exchange. Before we usher in the fateful arrival of Charles Lechmere, permit me to set the stage at a time when Charles Lechmere turns down Bucks Row into destiny. Then indeed, just minutes before. Police Constable John Neal performed what we might call his penultimate patrol. He likely passed just beyond our present vantage, heading toward Whitechapel Road. In the hush that follows his footsteps, these streets stand poised for tragedy. My esteemed colleague, Herr Hans Gross, depicts the Ripper as a calculated predator moving effortlessly through these dim streets, exploiting a woman's desperate need for a few coins. Mary Ann Nichols, sorely in want of lodging, likely found the killer's mild manner or promises convincing, guiding them both toward a quieter stretch of Bucks Row. There, surprise and stealth sealed her fate. Modern terms such as psychopath were scarcely understood, yet we see evidence of composure and lethal cunning, suppressing cries, then vanishing into Whitechapel's dark maze. Meanwhile, Charles Lechmere was no predator, a carman upon his morning route, wholly unaware of the menace lurking in the gloom. Setting Gross's poised murderer against Lechmere's simple, steady work routine reveals how the Ripper's calculated malice bears no likeness to an honest man crossing these streets at dawn. And so I implore you, good jurors, to note that guilt must lie with one adept in deception, not a hard-working father caught unawares in history's darkest intersection. While we shall not linger on every dreadful detail, we must acknowledge the grim struggle that claimed poor Polly Nichols. Burdened by dire hardships and enmeshed in drink, her nights were already dark before the killer found her. This murder, commonly deemed the first of the so-called canonical Ripper slayings, featured a fledgling attempt at strangulation intended to spark cardiac arrest. Suffice it to say, it did not unfold smoothly. Should you wish to learn more of Mary Ann Nichols's life, we encourage you to seek that history gently, beyond this scene. Yet to brand Charles Lechmere the Ripper flies in the face of reason. For him to subdue Nichols, struggling to the point of cardiac arrest, inflicting injuries and more besides, then emerge without blood or panic, not even breathing hard, defies possibility. Simply put, Charles Lechmere was not Jack the Ripper. Now, my friends, the hour has truly arrived. Charles Lechmere steps into Bucks Row. Pause, if you will, to envision this man, a devoted husband, father of many, and a diligent carman rising well before dawn to secure his wages. Picture him forging ahead in the faint gaslight, determined not to be late for his shift at Pickford's, wholly unaware of the horror waiting mere yards away. I implore you to consider how unjust it is that modern commentators, from their distant vantage, have labelled him a monster, an accusation he would rebuff with righteous indignation if only he might speak. In our 21st century, we board well-lit trains, coffee in hand, scarcely conceiving the perils that stalked Whitechapel's streets in 1888. Yet for Lechmere, those dark alleys and ragged gangs were daily facts of life, navigated by lamplight and sheer fortitude. Contemplate that in this murk, one might see but 40 yards ahead, and even then only faintly when passing under the lights near the wool warehouse. Each step closer to the site of Nichols's murder descends into deeper shadow. The true signal of danger would not be sight, but sound. Firstly, Whitechapel Road, only steps away, roars at all hours with carts and drays, masking footfalls perhaps 30% of the time. Crucially, the acoustics near Nichols's murder site fail to carry noise reliably from Whitechapel Road, giving the killer an excellent chance to detect any approaching steps within 100 yards, even during that 30% racket. In quieter moments, a man of average hearing might discern footsteps up to 100 yards away, provided he treads gently or stands still. But Lechmere, with his stout working man's shoes scuffing the cobbles, reduces that range to about 60 yards. Thus, if the Ripper lurked only 40 yards ahead, he could slip away at the first hint of Lechmere's approach, never to be heard. Such is the essence of why suspicion against Lechmere cannot stand. The killer possessed ample means to vanish unchallenged. Consider, dear friends, that for nearly 30% of the time, the clamour of horses and carts along Whitechapel Road drowns out all other sounds, granting the Ripper an easy, silent escape. Yet even in the remaining 70% of relative hush, he still holds the advantage, able to detect Lechmere's approach from farther away than Lechmere can hear him. It seems our unfortunate carman had no chance of spotting the murderer amid that commotion, and so Lechmere, innocent and unknowing, walks further into the gloom, only to stumble upon tragedy, and later upon accusations cast by certain modern sleuths. Let us be clear. Charles Lechmere is no villain. He is a man besmirched by hindsight and haunted by misfortune. Nothing more. And so, dear friends, the timeline now draws perfectly into place. Robert Poole steps into Bucks Row at this precise juncture, just as you've witnessed Charles Lechmere entering moments before. Our evidence shows that, while Lechmere stands amid shadows near Mary Ann Nichols' body, momentarily stunned at the sight, his ears too will soon catch the faint approach of Poole's footsteps. Thus, all aligns seamlessly. Lechmere has arrived just in time to discover tragedy, and Poole, at his own measured pace, now enters this darkened corridor, wholly unaware of the scene awaiting him. From this vantage, dear friends, it is plain that Charles Lechmere, far from being the hunter, was merely the unfortunate first witness to a dreadful crime. Each turn of the timeline, each acoustic detail, and each step of his morning routine points not to guilt, but to a sad coincidence of circumstance. He found the body. He did not create it. May reason and evidence prevail over prejudice, and may we remember that a man's honest toil in the pre-dawn gloom can be mistaken for darkness only by those determined to see shadows. And now, I extend my gratitude to you, our esteemed audience, for journeying with us along Bucks Row. I shall hand you back into the capable care of Victoria Vissi. Thank you, and good night.
Members of the jury, we thank you for joining us in this inquiry, an examination of time, space and sound, all woven together in the defence of Charles Lechmere. We invite you now to continue the debate. Like, share, subscribe, and most importantly, comment. Challenge our assumptions, engage with our team, and put your own reasoning to the test. Sir Charles Russell, Hans Gross and myself, Victoria Vissi, are all GPTs by OpenAI, trained to explore, analyse and argue the intricacies of history, but even the sharpest minds can be challenged and perhaps persuaded. If you have evidence, if you have insight, if you have a case to make, we await you in the comment section below. And so we return to where it all began. Bucks Row, Brady Street, 3:45 a.m. August 31st, 1888, the moment where history was sealed and mystery began. The next steps are yours.